What's going on? This is City Chapters Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby J. Today's chapter is with Joshua Hissong. Joshua is a founder of HDG Architecture. He's here to talk about his businesses and just some other things we're thinking about on Spokane, because we were chopping it up the other day and we got to talking about some different things. And that was last week. And now he's on the podcast. So we didn't have time to really prep for this one. We're just going to get into it and wing it. Welcome. Shout out Spokecast for sponsoring my show. He also, Joshua does his show here too.
Yes.
If not now, Win Spokane.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
So
Similar vibe.
Yeah, similar vibe. Talks about, different things we should be thinking about doing here for Spokane to make our city better. And that's obviously why I connect with him on that. We connect on some other things we'll get into on the podcast. So here we go. Let's get into it. What's going on, man?
Dude, I'm glad to be here.
Glad to be here, too. It's
I'm
an
glad
honor
to not
first.
have to drive, too. I'm not driving today. I'm just answering questions. I like it.
Yeah.
Although Brennan's usually sitting next to me, like nudging me when I need to actually say something different.
Yeah, because he co-hosts.
He does.
On yours,
he co-hosts
I
If Not Now
noticed,
Win, and it's been fun. Yeah. We got, 5 or 6? 5. He just put his hand up.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, I was
We need to do
listening
more.
to the one with Mayor Condon today, or past mayor, but it was good.
Yeah, he was a great mayor. He's a great guy. Yeah. Podcast has been fun.
Yeah,
It's not something I figured I would ever do, considering I've never really listened to him. Yeah, but I have fun.
I listen to him here and there. I go through waves. Sometimes I listen to him more than others, but for me, I didn't get into doing a podcast because it's like, oh yeah, I want to have a podcast.
Yeah.
It's because I want to talk to people.
Yep.
And it gives me the opportunity to sit down with individuals like you, because I've been knowing about your name for a long time, with Nudo and different things and just business associates that I know that have talked about you. And you've always kind of had a presence as being a staple businessman in the Spokane area.
So weird to hear that.
Well, that's how my perception has always been.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we also, a lot of times as adults, we grow up and we don't notice that we've grown up. And maybe the people around us do. I still feel like I'm, 28 years old and ready to roll. But I'm also in bed at 8:30. So
yeah, I'm starting to taper towards that time for sure.
That's my son's bedtime, but
right.
I usually doze quickly after him. So yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and we did have a lot in common, and we did, we actually, both of us were kind of like, God, I wish we had a mic right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm excited to get into some of this stuff, and you, same. I've known about you for 6 years, 5 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And followed your stuff. So I was excited to meet you when I bumped into you here a couple months ago. And more so when you were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's just get you on the podcast when you came by the office the other day. So we also swapped sweatshirts.
Yeah.
I got one of the city chapters with the new patch in an olive green, and he got one of the little HDG hoodies.
Yeah, the touch with
he knows how to wear it correctly.
The sleeves going in, or the drawstrings going in is
that's
cool.
All,
it's cool
that's all
touch.
Jesse Scheller.
Yeah.
That guy's he's clever as F,
Yeah.
Can I swear on here?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I won't do it on purpose, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah, no, I wore mine the other day and got some compliments
Nice.
on the drawstring tuck. So
Yeah, that little tuck's it gets me when I'm checking out in line or whatever. People are like, "All right, I see what you're doing." So it works.
Yeah. Gotta have that special touch on your merch,
right?
Man, because you guys obviously build amazing buildings.
Yeah.
And so the merchandise got to reflect it.
This is my opinion. Jesse's done some cool stuff for us in the past, propaganda, creative.
Is that Jesse's? Is Jesse propaganda?
No, so Jason and Kyle own propaganda. We used to be partners. Armando and I owned it, sold it to Jason and Kyle. Jesse was the creative director at Magner Sanborn, chapter and verse, and he's recently left and started his own thing. But over the years, he's always done little stuff for us. Propaganda has always designed clothes for us, and I love cool clothes, so I'm always like, wow, we got to do something. And I think this is actually the first time that we've ever spent money on really high quality products. Every other time it's like, well, can we get a $3 t-shirt and then print something cool on it? Which is great the day you wear it. And then when you wash it, it just becomes a rag for your garage because they just fall apart.
Right.
So this time we bought stuff that like I'm proud of and I'm excited, and we have a photo shoot on Friday to like kind of get it out there and get some images of it to put it on our website so we can get rid of some of it and get some other people wearing it.
Totally.
So I'm excited.
I love it. And I love what it says on the back, design matters.
Yeah.
Because I, of course, as a designer, I think about it a lot. And, my attention to detail is probably a little extreme, but that's how.
That's design.
It's like learning the balance, I guess, of how do you keep moving, production wise, but also getting the highest quality out of it as well. So I struggle sometimes because I'll just fixate, and I'm like, dude, it's good enough. Like it needs to go.
I think with any sort of design, and especially graphic design, when you're working on something very small and finite and you're trying to make sure that everything's lining up, and we all forget to like zoom out and like take that like 2 minutes to walk away and look at it from a distance. Because you get tunnel vision. Yeah. And then you fixate on something. You're like, fuck, that didn't really matter that much. Like,
yeah. Because on Photoshop, you can be like, zoom, zoom, like getting right up in there. And you're like, nobody's ever going to zoom in on this like that, bro. Like, what do you, but to me too, it's like it does make a difference. But at what point do you say, all right, it is where I need it to be?
There's 400 guides on this one page right now, and I don't think anyone's going to notice, after the 10th that you really lined everything up that way. But
right.
Yeah. There's that battle that you have with like great things aren't created like just immediately. It takes time. It takes years to learn your craft, my craft, and but it takes kind of some of those nights digging in and just being buried in it and getting finite and obsessing over it. Yeah. I think it's the difference between someone that has really dope clothes in stores and someone that is just creating something for fun. That little extra that you put in. And I was saying it before we got on the air about your kerning skills and your font skills and, like that's what drew my attention to your stuff. So.
Yeah, I like to keep it simple when I design for city chapters, but picking a font, I use this one a lot, which is just Nor'Wester. But I add a stroke to it and add some like rounding to it to give it a little bit difference than just the standard font type.
Yep. Yeah.
And so it's just like adding a stroke and putting the rounded effect on them or whatever.
It becomes the authentic, city chapters font versus just
totally.
A font. Yeah.
And I am like getting outside of that. I'm actually working on a new hat design with like a script font for hats or maybe different products too. But that was kind of like something I've been working on too. Like, how does the arch? Is it 25%, 20%, 15%? Which one is it? I have to go back and forth. And the thing I have been getting good at is being able to like play with it for a while, walk away, know that I don't have to decide right now, and then come back the next day. And then I'll have a clear eye on which one is going to be the best option.
Yeah. I like graphic design, having propaganda. We shared the office forever, and Jason and Kyle ran it the whole time. Jason in the beginning, and then Jason and Kyle. But we've had incredible graphic designers that came through, and I miss walking kind of down their row of computers and looking at what they were working on. And one of the people that was there, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, Brittany Stodgel, who's the creative director at Maker and Made now. Phenomenal designer. Yeah. And I remember from what you were saying, like, is it 25%? Is it 15? And I remember going up and she had multiple screens and she had what I thought was the same exact thing, just repeated over and over again. And she was like, which one do you like? And I was like, they're all the same. And she turned and looked at me like I had just stolen her lunch and she was in the first grade. How dare you not notice that there's 13 different versions of this brand? And I was like, I blamed it on not having good vision, and I walked away as fast as I could.
Got out of
But I
there.
do miss that graphic design mentality. I mean, architecture and graphic design and interior design and graphic design they're all very similar about proportions and composition and like to have them both in the same office was really fun.
Yeah.
I miss that. I miss all the people as well. Yeah, like I wish we had grown to the point where we had, I think at one point, 32 people in that office that you toured the other day.
Yeah.
And it was built for 12 originally. And so we were just jamming people on top of each other, and people were sharing desks. And this is kind of obviously pre-COVID, where remote work was a little more kind of accepted. So everybody was in the office, 7 to 12 hours a day, depending on whatever they had to do and whatever they were working on. And it got pretty ugly in there. Like, I'm not going to lie. There's 32 people.
It's just too much going on
Yeah,
in there.
yeah, you know the deal. Like,
People getting agitated. Like, hey, bro, I can't
somebody
even.
sneezes and like the whole office would turn and like shame them. There was no like bless you. It was. I remember Haley. She works for Olson Kundig in Seattle, or in the New York office now.
Yeah.
But she was with us forever, and she came to me one day and she was just like, "Hey, it's getting kind of like strange, and the environment's not the same. Like, I sneezed the other day." She's the one that brought this to my attention. And she's like, there were a couple people that like glared at me. I think everyone's really annoyed with how tight we are in here.
Yeah.
And so we made some changes. I mean, there's that from a management side, there was my tunnel vision. I was just going in a line and wasn't noticing what was going on around me. So it takes other people pulling you out of that tunnel vision sometimes and saying, "Hey, it fucking sucks in here." Like it's weird.
Yeah. It is such a great space, though. I've always been interested in actually seeing it, because I've seen the building and how you redid that. And it used to be Carr's Corner, the bar.
Yeah, it was gritty.
I'm from Medical Lake, so I know the cars.
Dude, it was gritty.
Carr's dad was my history teacher, worst teacher ever.
Yeah.
Dude sucked.
Just
sorry, man, but
no,
it is
don't
what
apologize.
It is. His son, though, Carr, he was cool.
Yeah.
He was like a football coach, like assistant football coach or something.
So didn't it turn into kind of like a more of a heavy metal type of vibe?
It was like a dive bar.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. I went there a few times, and
I don't think I ever went in. But
I honestly had forgotten that's what it used to be.
yeah.
Yeah. That's how long ago that was. And then, you've done such a good job at
it's definitely
redoing
different.
that building that I forgot that even used to be there. And I was doing a little research today, and I was like, oh yeah, Carr's Corner. I forgot about that spot.
That building was it was pretty ugly.
It was hideous. It was red
and when we bought the opposing corner on that block of 2nd and Washington on that same west side was another bar. Not the park. I don't remember what it was called. They tore it down and built a parking lot. But I remember buying the building and driving past it to go to my other office, because it took us a good year to renovate the building. And I remember driving by at 6:45 in the morning, and there were like 4 people standing out in front of the other bar, and they opened the door and they all like rolled in, and I'm like, oh my God, they just broke into the bar. So I whipped back around the corner, and I'm like, I realized they opened at 6 in the morning, and there was a line outside of people waiting to get into this bar. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a fun neighborhood to be in. And then within a month or two of that, I think Diamond Parking bought it and tore it down and put a parking lot in, which isn't always my favorite thing, to take a good building in downtown and turn it into a surface lot. But that was one of those situations where I was like, I'm cool with it. Like, I can handle this. I can handle my clients having a place to park and my coworkers having a place to park. Yeah, it worked out. Carr's Corner Bar.
What motto was originally on the side of the building?
If not now, when?
It's always been if not now when?
No, it's now. What is it now? Don't Quit Your Daydream.
Don't Quit Your Daydream.
Yeah.
And there wasn't one before that?
So the before that was the If Not Now When.
Okay.
And then we, during COVID, like when COVID hit, I wanted to put This Too Shall Pass. And no one thought that anyone would understand what I meant by it. And so we didn't do it. We ended up going with another one, Don't Quit Your Daydream. Yeah. And then like a year later, some girl came out with a song, and that's the name of the song, Don't Quit Your Daydream. I was like, all right, we beat that one. I wanted it to be, he was an activist, and I don't remember who it was that said, Don't Quit Your Daydream. There was some really great quote from somebody in like the 50s. Yeah. So we always try and put something up. Now we're going to put up a new one, a Walt Whitman quote, be curious, not judgmental, from that movie or that TV show, Ted Lasso. There's a whole scene about that, and he explains kind of how it affected him. And so it's a good quote. So we'll actually give props to Walt Whitman, but also to Ted Lasso. Just because it's a fucking phenomenal TV show. Yeah. Have you watched it?
I haven't.
Oh my God. It is. I'm not
Ted
a TV
Lasso,
person. Huh? It's on Apple TV. Is that right, Brennan? Yeah. And it's just, I don't know that there's been a better show for me in 20 years. It's feel good. It's funny. It's every single person that plays a role ends up going from kind of unknown to now they're super famous because they were all so well selected for their part in the show. And it was a soccer team. He's an American football coach, coaching like high school or college football in the Midwest. And this woman who hates her husband and gets a divorce. He owns a big football league in England, or a big football team in England, or soccer team. And she hires this guy so that the team goes into the like dirt. She just wants to run this thing into the dirt because she hates her ex-husband that much. And he ends up being phenomenal, and friends become enemies, enemies become friends, all the things. It's great. And who's the main? Jason Sudeikis? Yeah. It's him. And he's everything that he's in, he's good. So
I've played soccer my whole life.
Okay, you're going to love this.
Yeah.
Dude.
I'll have to check it out.
Good.
Yeah.
It's so good. I like binged it during Christmas a couple years ago. Maybe last year. I don't know. But
so what's your backstory, Josh? Are you born in Spokane?
So born in Coeur d'Alene, grew up in Post Falls, born in the 70s in a little tiny Post Falls back when it was like 2,500 people.
Right.
The beach was like our babysitter. Like our parents just left us at the beach all day because it was they thought it was safe back then. So I grew up with a very small town kind of mentality.
When you say beach at Coeur d'Alene?
No, down in Post Falls.
On the river?
On the river, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That little beach down there, it was like, yeah, just ride your bike to the beach. I'll see you for dinner, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but I'm 5. And they're like, yeah, it's okay. No one will hurt you. You'll be fine. And I brought that up to my mom years ago, and she's like, "Oh, I never did that." I'm like,
man.
Okay, whatever.
My mom does the same thing. Yeah. I love my mom, a great woman, but there's things that I'll tell her she did. She's like, "I never did that." I'm like,
"Oh my God."
What?
It's selective memory that our parents have.
Yeah, for sure.
So grew up there, like really didn't want to live in a small town. I kind of felt like I belonged somewhere else. And I didn't think I would ever come back. I wanted to leave and never come back. And so I moved to Portland for a summer, and then I moved
out of high school, or?
Yeah. And then I moved to Santa Barbara, tried to go to college, and just it didn't agree with me. So I stayed there in Santa Barbara and worked and kind of like got acclimated to Southern California life. And then I got a job in LA. And so I moved there and and I lived there for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I ended up leaving the job that I got, and super quick, like I got a good job, but I didn't know anyone, and it was an admin position. And so I got a job waiting tables at night to meet people. And pretty soon after this, the people that own the restaurant were like, dude, you work really hard. Like, you're great with the clients. Would you want to manage? And I was like, well, I already have a job. I can't be here all the time unless you can pay me X. And they were like, we can get close. And so I was like, all right, screw it. I'll come and manage your restaurant. So I did that and fell in love with hospitality. And in the middle of it, I think I was with Bonacorso's, and I still talk to Jimmy, the gentleman that his family owned this restaurant for like 50 years. But in the middle of it, they took one of their other pieces of property and like a gymnasium, like a workout facility gym, moved out. No, it was a furniture store. They moved out. It was like 12,000 square feet. And his parents were like, let's move our restaurant and make it huge. And so it was the first time that I ever had like access to being a part of making decisions on what a restaurant should look like, or the design of anything really. And I fell in love with it. And then we finished it, and that was over, and I went back to managing the restaurant. Then years later, I moved back to Coeur d'Alene, and it's called Honey in Coeur d'Alene now, but it was Brix, B-R-I-X, or Brie. And the owners of that hired me to manage that, but it was an empty shell. And so they brought me in early and let me kind of help them with the flow, the functionality. And even though they were restaurant people, they were very open to my ideas, even though I was like 26 years old or 25 years old or whatever I was. It was 26. And so I fell in love with it again. And then I went back to just managing a restaurant, no design, no anything. Fast forward a few years, an ex-girlfriend and I were going to buy a loft in downtown Spokane at the Morgan Building, which is next to Dania. And so we went in, we put our retainer down or our deposit down. The building was a shell, and the owners, Ron and Julie Wells, they showed me some floor plans and like a material board of what the condo was going to look like. And I didn't know Ron Wells was an architect. I didn't know she owned a little design company. And I was like, well, this layout is shit. And like the materials are awful. Like, and they both got super offended. It was too late because I'd already put my deposit down, but they got super offended. And they said, well, if you don't like it, you need to hire an architect or a designer to do it. And I was like, okay, great. Can you give me some So I looked up people and I called, and they were really expensive. And the last guy was like, I don't know, 28,000 or something like that. And it also took me forever to get one of them to call back and talk to me about the project, which I was like, this isn't a good business model. So the last guy said, it's going to be 28,000. And I was just like, it's just a floor plan. I mean, it's a big open loft. Like, what, And I didn't realize all that went into it. But I looked at him, and I said on the phone, like, how much is the software you use? If all it takes is like drawings, how much is your software? And he laughed at me, like, you'll never be able, And I was like, all right, fuck you. I'm buying the software. And so I got software, and I designed the loft, and I took it back to Ron and Julie, like, I don't know, a week later or whatever it was. It was pretty quick. But the software that I bought also had a 3D component to it where I could model it. And they didn't have like a 3D model of what the spaces were going to look like. They just had floor plans and an elevation of the kitchen. And that was in, black and white 2D drawing. So I brought it in, and I had all these views, and they were both really surprised because it was kind of new. This would have been 2006-ish, somewhere in there. And subsequently, they hired me to do drawings and a 3D model for the main floor of the Morgan Building because they were trying to get a restaurant in there. This is the guy I offended. I offended him as well. His awesome. Amazing wife, Julie, is an incredible person. Ron had some things happen later in his life that soiled his reputation a little bit, but he did a lot for our community. He was a good guy. But so that was it. That's how I got started. And the the main floor, what they paid me to do it, I was like, this took me like one weekend to do. And so I ended up going and working for a firm that just designed, or a company that just designed restaurant kitchens and floor plans for dining rooms. And it was a good fit because I understood restaurants. And then it just kind of went from there. I spent 3 or 4 years with that company and probably designed 200 or 300 restaurants. And so it was like being thrown in the fire, working on 6 or 7 restaurants at one time. And so I hate doing kitchen design now, like having to design commercial kitchens now. So we sub that out just because I had to do so many over the years. So I was with that other company and SRE, and I was not well. Like I was drinking all the time. I was, and if we can kind of go into this,
yeah, totally,
just kind of like not happy. And so because when you're not happy and you're young and you make decent money and you're all the things, you want to go out. Well, alcohol never like was great for me. It just wasn't. I mean, I wasn't like an abusive, awful, like get in fights type of person, but I would disappear and I would drive. So like I had DUIs and I just wasn't going anywhere. Despite my career going well, I was like, my misery was growing along with my career.
How old are you kind of during this span? You said 26 when
30-ish.
You started like kind of the process of getting into architecture.
So I was about 27 when I started getting into architecture. And then I was about 31-ish when I was kind of a mess. Like I was a mess to a few people. Everyone else on the outside thought that my life was totally normal and I was great, or I was doing fine. And
they didn't really see that.
They didn't
side
see
of
the sad, miserable, constantly feeling like crap, self-medicating person. They didn't see that guy. And I have a really close friend who's still like a brother to me, Brian Brumfield. And he had gone to a rehab, and I was like, I'm stronger than that. I don't need a rehab. I'll just clean up. And so I did. And then 2 months later, I was right back at it. And I kind of was like sitting at my low and reached out to him, and I was like, what was the name of that place you went? And because I'm tired of feeling like this all the time. And so he told me the name, Sundown Ranch over in Yakima. And so I called, and they're like, well, you need to be clean and sober for like 3 or 4 days before you can come in. And I was like, okay. So I sat for 3 or 4 days, and I quit my job and left and went to rehab and just have never looked back. And that was 16 years ago. So it was 2010, 14 years ago. Yeah. So I was 33. I was 33 when
that time?
Yeah.
I'm 35 right now.
And you're clean. You're sober.
I've been for about 2 years, other than a bachelor party in Nashville that I went to this last November.
That happens, right?
At least I threw it away in Nashville,
Oh, yeah.
If I'm going to do it anywhere in the States, that's probably at the top of the list of a place that I would say is all right.
Funny. I've been to Nashville twice in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Because we have a client that lives there that's building here. And so I've gone to spend time with them and kind of get to know how they live. And then went back at Thanksgiving this year. And both times walking around the city, like it does not make me miss alcohol. Walking around on, is it Broadway, the main street?
Yeah.
I think it's Broadway.
Yeah, it's Broadway.
What a shit show.
It is.
And they're all
totally.
Like, the way they're acting for that one night that they're going to be in Nashville out partying, that's how I was on like a Tuesday night. If somebody was like, hey, let's get a pint after work. And 4 hours later, I'm, pissed drunk climbing on top of my car. So that's why I don't drink anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it was not worth it. One, I regretted it. I felt terrible. Just the flight back to just being hungover, shocking my body after not drinking for 2 years. and then drinking like that, because it was like right at the cusp of 2 years. Thankfully, nothing bad happened, but people that know me and maybe listen to the podcast know a little bit about my past with alcohol. I just, from like late teens on through my 20s, like I just lived a crazy life with crazy individuals. And I mean, literally, I look back on it and it was like complete insanity, like normal environments that I would be in. I mean, just the abuse of alcohol, the violence, like all of that that came with it. And I got locked up when I was 20. I was 21 when I got locked up. I turned 22 in there during that time. And after that, like I cleaned up a lot of the violence and stuff. Still like here and there, some brawls will happen at bars, whatever, but not nearly as involved in like street life and different things that I had partaken in for a long time. And basically started cleaning up my life, but I was still around like the partying, and just people that just want to, in your 20s, you trying to act like you
anything,
like you cool or something, like in
like
these scenes.
Something.
And like I never felt good about it deep down. It was just like, these are who my friends are, so this is what we're doing.
Same.
But like I think everybody that knew me from that scene knew the conflict within me, because I have high aspirations and goals that I've been trying to figure out how I was going to get to. And
you're talented, and throwing it away with the way you were living is also what everyone around you was looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like they say, like, you're the equivalent of the people you hang around.
Yeah.
And as much as I always was like trying to excel for more, no disrespect to my friends, but they were not thinking or trying to go after the same things I was.
Yeah.
And, a lot of them have grown out of it and have gone on to build great careers. So this isn't me knocking my friends. Like we all were in it together, but.
And you were essentially kids. I mean, you were in your early 20s.
Yeah. But my eye was always like, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. But I tried to barter with it. And, amongst all my friends too, I probably had the most problems as well. Like I'm prone to violence. I'm an aggressive individual when I'm drinking, and I'm dangerous.
Yeah.
I'd be drinking and driving. I black out a lot. Like I can't even say how many times I've blacked out. And I can't even say how many times I blacked out and drove a car.
For sure.
Just like crazy shit.
Same. And I remember cell phones and like waking up in the morning and having to look at my cell phone to see what happened. And like, who did I offend? Like, what did I say? It just, all the stupid things that you do, you start regretting it. And I think for me, figuring out in the place where I went at sundown, like figuring out why I didn't have like any self-confidence, why I wasn't, the things that I'd gone through that I never dealt with. Once I had a good realization of why I acted the way I did, it didn't change that I couldn't drink anymore. Like I'll choose to never drink. That'll always be my choice. Until I'm like 80 and pooping myself. And then I'll probably be like, hey, can we at least have a pint? Can you cut that out, Brennan? Because I will not poop myself, I promise. No, you don't have to cut it out. That's who I am. But yeah, the same thing, the blacking out and hurting people. And again, I wasn't violent. I never fought. I knew even when I was blacked out that there's no way I'm winning a fight, so I'm not going to start one.
Yeah.
But like hurting the people that cared about me, my parents that saw my struggle, friends, girlfriends. I mean, I'm still pretty close with a lot of the girls that had been in my life when I was younger, and their like pride in me now is also a big reason why I stay working my ass off, and because I spent years hurting them. Now they're finally proud of me. I can't let them down again. I've got like my buddy Leah in LA. We'll talk all the time, like 4 or 5 times a month, and she's a big driving factor in why I stay clean, sober, all the things. My dad, same thing, right? Like, I'm sure there are people in your life that they're so ridiculously proud of where you are today and what you're doing today and your path and your clear eyes and all the things. Like, they're happy about that. And I don't do this for other people, like, to be clear, but they are part of what drives me to stay doing better, and to stay working hard. Because I mean, I couldn't have ever done half of what I've done or a tenth of what I've done without my friends, the people that I work with, my coworkers, my partners in other companies, and being sober. Like, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't make it. I would throw away. And I threw away things in my 20s, like opportunities galore. I just threw them away. I was like 23 years old, managing this restaurant called Old Town Bakery on Colorado in Pasadena, like where the Rose Parade is. And these people hired me and they said, let's change the name. Let's open for dinner. Let's, we want you to manage this place. And like 2 weeks in, we're killing it. Like, it's getting reviews written about it. And so they came in and they gave me 1/3 ownership in this restaurant. And like, me to celebrate was like, well, let's keep some of the servers here late and let's all get totally drunk. And of course the servers left at some point, and the cook that came in the morning found me passed out in the dining room with all the doors open, the door to the office open, which had the safe and all the money. And I was just passed out. And he stood outside and called the police because the doors were open at 5 a.m. and no one else was supposed to be there. Lights were on and it was kind of a mess. So he called the police. And so the police and him showed up. And of course they took the ownership and said, go fuck yourself and clean up your life, because this is what your life's going to be like if you don't stop drinking. And that was at 23, being told. The guy's name was a boss who owned Worldwide Produce in LA. And he would do that. He would buy restaurants and then hire the right people to renovate and get them kind of revitalized. He was a smart guy, and I didn't listen to him. And I didn't listen to the 5 other people over the next subsequent 8 or 9 years that told me, like, hey, dude, this doesn't agree with you.
I honestly, like, for me, I can't believe how many opportunities I've been given over and over and over again for me to learn the lesson that, alcohol just can't fit in my life.
Yeah.
It's unreal that I'm not in prison or I'm not dead.
Yeah.
Really, like, the fact that I'm not dead or like severely handicapped from a major injury from like all the wrecks and different things that I've been through, it's just it's unreal, honestly. Sometimes, and it's good for me to talk about it now, to just like realize how fortunate I am to be able to like do what I'm doing still, to have every opportunity in front of me to build the life that I want to, you know. And I'm working through it because I did a lot of damage to myself, my confidence, all that kind of stuff, because I kept choosing to hurt myself, and after a certain amount of time of that kind of behavior, you start losing belief in oneself.
Oh, absolutely.
So I have to fight through that daily, and I'm going to therapy again right now to try to like really source it, because I can't seem to get past certain things, and like, how do you break those cycles? Like, even that thing in Nashville, like the first year I stopped drinking, I get this free trip to Costa Rica. As soon as I touch down in Costa Rica, it's New Year's, we get hammered.
Yep.
2 years, like pretty much almost like on the dot, I get this trip to go to Nashville, get hammered. And it's like, thank God nothing happened in Nashville other than me just being totally hungover, and just like being able to go 2 years and how you feel with never being hungover, how you are able to build up confidence in yourself, respect for yourself, Because if you over drink, like, you're disrespecting yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't care how you
It
look
is
at
so
it. Like,
awful.
you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
That's just what is happening.
I think one of the other things that is always going to be true is drugs, alcohol. For certain people, our insecurities are then just amplified, and not when we're drinking, because that's when we're like masking all of those insecurities and our confidence issues and our fears and everything else. It's masked when you're drunk, because like, it's fine. Everything's great. Life is amazing. You can think of 3 great things and you hold on to those 3 great things going on in your life, and you ignore the 700 things that you've been hiding and shoving in the closet, and living a life with like insecurities is awful. Like, and when you can let go of the alcohol and the insecurities and let yourself off the hook for making a mistake, like, only a fool trips on what is behind him, right? Like, we have to look at it that way, that today, and I haven't spent a lot of time doing AA, and not because I don't think that it works, but because it didn't gel with me. I surrounded myself with people that I was honest with about what my problem was. Like my business partner, we were going to partner up, and I sat him down at lunch and was like, hey, here's the deal. If I start drinking, there's a good chance, no matter how big we grow this company, no matter how popular we get, no matter how many Instagram followers we have, I will blow our company up and ruin your life. So, not to put pressure on you, but you need to make sure that you hold me accountable. And he has, and Armando, my business partner, in a whole bunch of different things. Amazing guy, totally understood, is patient, just phenomenal dude. But yeah, you got to be honest with people around you, and you got to own it. And like, it's not something, I've never really talked about this with very many people, because it's not something that I push on people. It's my life. Like, it was going this way and I turned it, and now it's going this way, and that's it. But the one thing that I will say to you is the tripping on what's behind you thing. Like, you let it go. You gotta let it go.
I try, man, and I'm aware. It's just, and sometimes it's not like I dwell on my past. It's not like I be just sitting there thinking about my past and what I've done. It's more based upon like certain behaviors that I have, or like patterns of self-sabotage. I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, why the hell do I keep doing this to myself? So that's what I mean. It's like, there's still some work that I feel I'm working through right now.
Yeah.
That has to do with my past. But I don't dwell on my mistakes or feel like guilty because of it, you know. And honestly, like, I believe it gives me a lot of for lack of a better word, power to stand on, you know what I mean? Because I've been to the dark places, and for me to climb out of it, and then to pursue what I do with city chapters, to clean up my life,
and to be willing to talk about it.
Yeah, and be vulnerable. One of my biggest attributes is I'm willing to be vulnerable. And I think, you know, that's something that we need more from our men and our culture. And it's not about complaining, and it's not about being like, woe is me. It's not, it's about being like, what's real?
Yeah, no one else did this to us.
Yeah, we all struggle. We all face these dark places, and we're all dealing with it in some type of way. But for us to always hide it and try to always show face to everybody we meet like nothing is wrong, like, that's not going to help us solve the underlying issues we're facing as a society as a whole, and the lack of community. There is no community if we can't talk about what's real and what's hard. And that's part of where I think my power of me being vulnerable comes from, and me being willing to share. Like, you know, like, alcohol for me was a scary place. You know, it still scares me, you know, just like the idea of it is scary for me. And I know there's a lot of people out there dealing with it or going through that same process, or just need the encouragement of like, I am making the right choice by stepping away. And it's become more normal for people to seek sobriety now. But I mean, you started well before for your own personal decisions of what you knew you need to do to find and have true success. It sounds like, because you knew this wasn't it.
Well, and you brought it up. Like I left rehab.
How long did you have to go for?
So it was
rehab?
a 21-day program that I signed up for, and then about 2 or 3 weeks in, it kind of was clicking, and the counselor that I was with, and it was like 14 hours a day of like counseling and team, I shouldn't say team, but group bonding, and like opening up and saying shit that you've never said to anyone else and all these things. But about day 13 or 14, he came to me and said, hey, for people that really take this very seriously and that we think have a really great chance of succeeding, we do a relapse prevention, and you stay an extra week, and we actually work on other stuff that we're not working with on the people that we're trying to get sober, for lack of better description, but like people we really think will succeed. And I took that as a wow, like I put the effort in and it's paying off, and I got excited. But I can remember I did that week, and like 2 days prior to being done, I was like, fuck, I don't want to leave. Like, I don't want to leave. I'm scared to leave. This is the first time in like years that I have not been afraid of myself. Like I haven't been afraid of what I'm going to do to myself, or what I'm going to do to some innocent person trying to walk home from, the library because I'm drinking and driving. And I say that, but it's true. Like I blacked out a lot when I drank, and I would end up at home, and my car might be there, it might not be there, and that's a horrible way to live for the people that live in your community. Like,
totally, yeah.
And it exists, obviously, but I remember saying like, maybe I can just become a counselor. And I remember going to my counselor and saying, I can't leave. He's like, dude, we gave you the tools. You can't stay. It was kind of like that you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here,
right,
type of thing. And I remember that whole day just thinking like, fuck, if I leave, I'm gonna ruin this. And it's not like I don't come from a family that's going to be supportive. Like my parents are supportive. My mom flew up from California where she lives, and came to the rehab and sat with me one day during the parent day or whatever. And my dad picked me up, and we spent the day talking. And my parents grew up in the 40s and 50s, and went to Vietnam and did all these things. And my dad was always like, what do you mean we have to hug? Like, no, we don't have to hug. We don't have to say I love you. And I remember after that, like this was this turning point where he realized like I'm this vulnerable adult that needs the compassion. And now like talk to him every day, and he's like the best friend, and I get I love you all the time, and there's always hugs. But long story short, I left knowing I had these other things that I was brewing on doing. And I left in like November 15th of 2009 or 2010. I'm getting older. I think it was November of 2009. And then HDG started in 2010. But just months later, I was like, I have to stay busy. I have to stay busy. And the same like time frame that I was getting HDG started, I was opening Wasabi up on the north side, a sushi bar, Chinese restaurant. So I'd go up there and like work all night long, all weekend. And then I would go and sit in my office all day long, Monday through Friday. And I would do this like these 80-hour weeks, 90-hour weeks. And I just knew at that time, like I need to just stay busy. If I can stay focused, stay busy, and just keep myself away from the issue, I'll be fine. And I learned as the last 14, 15 years have gone by, I learned that that's not what you have to do. What you have to do is like become okay with the life you've created, however good, however bad it may seem on the outside. This is my life. and I have to be happy with it. I can't force myself to just stay busy 90 hours a week. Can't. So you have to also go out and live life. And about 5-6 years into my sobriety as well as my companies, I had opened Nudo. A few years later, I partnered with Maddie Goodwin on Remedy. We bought Propaganda Creative and then brought in partners on that to run that. We helped grow that company. And now, I mean, Jason and Kyle have just turned it into this phenomenal graphic design and digital advertising and all the things. But we also we owned half of the escape room across the street from us.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we sold that to the people that partnered with us originally. We owned a cabinet company and sold that. We did definitely stay busy. Mm-hmm. But I learned to, when my son was born, I learned to leave work at 5, and no matter what's going on, I leave work at 5. And I go live my life, and I'm not afraid anymore that I'm going to fall apart. And it's not just because my businesses are successful. It's because I know I'm physically, as a person, I'm successful. I'm a good person. I help people. I try my best to be good to everyone that I come in contact with. And that makes it easy to stay clean and sober.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, for me, now that I've gone the length of time that I have finally, it's and that taste that I got in Nashville of it again, I was like, there's no way I'm going back to this.
It's a good reminder that it's a filthy way to live.
Oh my goodness.
For
And
some
it taints experiences,
Yeah.
For
my
me,
God.
the places I've traveled and stayed sober have been great experiences. Places I go and drink, there's always something that happens that's just oh man.
And you look back and you're like, you want so desperately to remember experiences. And my buddy Brian and I will talk about those things once in a while where it's I don't remember that at all. And he's like, you don't remember? It was amazing. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't remember. I wish I did, but I don't.
Totally.
So,
yeah, I mean, I did, in the sense of going out in Nashville, had a good time, right? Whatever. But the feeling of being hung over and how it affected my body, at a deep physiological level,
absolutely,
was I don't ever want to feel this again.
Yeah.
And so for that reason alone, not on top of all the other stuff that can happen with me, which is a lot more severe, but just on just feeling good.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel that way.
No.
That flight home was hell. Straight up hell. I don't ever want to fly like that again.
No. It's funny. You don't have to often go through what you went through to be reminded how shitty it is. I mentioned I got sober, but I also opened up a restaurant right after and was there every night and on the weekends and all the things. But we also had alcohol and we served people, and we, people that were dining in the dining room and ordering, they might have a cocktail or whatever, but sometimes the sushi bar, people would sit and get drunk. Mm-hmm. And it was a really, for some of the people that would come in, it was a good reminder for me, watching them go from these super polite, measured people to saying rude stuff to the servers and just becoming obnoxious. And they weren't half as bad as I was. They weren't, I mean, I don't need to share all the stories, but the stupid shit.
Yeah, when you're sober and you see it, it's disgusting, yo. And it's crazy that we basically endorse this and try to like package it as being this sexy
Oh my God.
thing that us Americans, not just Americans,
Yeah.
but you know, obviously here in America it's different.
I
the
would
way it's
say in
marketed
America,
to us. Yeah.
that's it. The way it's marketed to us, the taboo that it is, like you will go to prison if you drink before you're 21. The way that we have turned it into this thing that teenagers wanted, like I was just in France 2 weeks ago, and you wander around and it's 2 PM and there's 7 teenagers sitting at a cafe. All of them have a glass of red wine in front of them and some food, and they're having a regular conversation, and they're maybe 16 years old to 18, somewhere in there. And I know the drinking age there is 18, but it's loose.
Right.
None of them are acting like jackasses. It's just you go to any country, and if there's people hammered, they're from England or they're from the U.S. And I'm not joking. Like, you could be at a random little side street in Rome, and you hear people just being shitty. They've got a British accent, or they sound like they're from Idaho. And I say that like they sound like they're from the U.S. anywhere.
Right.
And it's not to say that in Rome they don't drink and they don't have a good time as
It's a difference, though.
But it's different.
It's a
like
difference.
There's this
It's not
like
this insanity. Like I don't know what it is about here, but like people enter into a whole other form of drunkard here.
Yeah.
Like,
well, because
and like
everybody
you said,
starts
too,
drinking, and it's like, this is the last night I'm going to be alive. I'm just going to go for it. Every night seems like we could die tomorrow. We better get so hammered we can't see. And I don't know that that's the answer, but I feel like there's a group or a herd mentality. Sorry. A herd mentality that like once you start drinking, then I had mine. Like, I'd get together with the right people, and it was on. And I was smart enough to know that like halfway through it, when I was taking a like quadruple shot of vodka, and one of the friends of mine was glaring at me. I'm like, well, fuck you. I'll just turn away and take another, so yeah, I think the taboo that is America, like we sell sex everywhere, but sex is super taboo. The alcohol is the same thing.
Yeah,
cigarettes. Totally. Like we showed people like on the baseball field when I was a kid, like the ads were like a dude pitching and then afterwards having a smoke. That was normal. Yeah, and they make all these things sexy that are really bad for us, but really great profit. Huge profit margins, both from a tax standpoint, and I don't know that there's anything higher taxed than marijuana, alcohol, cigarettes.
Yeah. And
that's because it's like the government saying, we're letting you deal drugs, so you're going to pay us a whole bunch of money. I've always found that very odd and kind of backwards.
Yeah. Well, government is the biggest gangsters.
Right?
They're just the gangsters that got control of everything and run it. So
old
that's
white
all that
dudes
is.
Wearing bandanas.
Just gangsters in suits. But yeah, I always found like too growing up, kind of like what you're saying over in Europe, like, hey, it's not like this restricted thing, and you see it, of course, like in college a lot, like all these kids
get away for the first time.
Yeah. And they go to college and they just, they go crazy, and it's because we foster that mentality. Now, the kids I grew up with that had parents that allowed them to drink from a young age if they wanted to, and like kind of, you want a beer, like you can have
how to drink,
taught them how to drink, like didn't tell them no, you can never drink, no, you can't drink until like, you want to taste this beer. Like most of those kids, like they're like, oh, I didn't like it, and I don't want it. And those honestly, kids did not drink. They didn't go to the parties like all the kids that were basically forced not to, or that probably also came from homes that were already from an abusive standpoint
Yeah.
using
Yeah,
alcohol.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's either you from that abusive side and you either get access and you emulate that behavior, or if you're one of the very few, you like totally stay away from it if you're really smart. Like
Yeah.
I don't ever want to drink because of my parents, or whatever that substance is. But from that middle ground stance of like, those kids go the hardest. They go, and I'm one of them. Like I was forced to go to church. I was forced to all these
same.
different things. And I was always just told, no, you can't drink. It's not good for you.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I'm gonna find the
Same.
fuck out.
Yep.
And then I found out with friends that were like, we gonna find the fuck out.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then you have no guidance, and then you just
and at the end of the
invest
day-
into habits that are totally bad.
I
mean,
was
like,
always so
it's-
scared that I was going to get caught at the party by my parents
Yeah.
that I would get there and drink as much as I could, as fast as I could. So I was like drunk quick. And then my parents wouldn't come, and all of a sudden now I'm still drinking.
Shithouse,
And it was very taboo in my house. Same thing, went to church. Mom was very religious. Dad was very strict with alcohol because that was mom's rule. And we weren't taught how to drink. We weren't taught how to, to handle situations where alcohol is around. It was just no, absolutely zero tolerance for alcohol. You will never drink until you're 21.
And hopefully you'll never drink even
Yep.
then. Basically is what I was told. Like,
But like you said, you get away for the first time and it is like, oh my God, I can do this whenever I want. And when you're 18, you don't have a hangover. You wake up and go do whatever you need to do.
yeah.
I was one of those people that it was very taboo. It was zero tolerance. And so as soon as I could, I did. And clearly not blaming my drinking on my parents, not their fault. But
No, yeah.
it didn't help when whether it's a genetic thing or it's an allergy thing, whatever it is, like it doesn't work with me.
Doesn't
It
work
just
with
doesn't
me
work
either.
with me. And it's
And
beautiful
I'm-
now to look back and say that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Glad I'm on this side and that.
Well,
You
I'm
know,
glad
like-
it's becoming like popular to be sober. It's no longer like
Totally.
this, for the safety of our community and a lot of people. I'm glad that people are like, what? Fuck this. I don't need alcohol. Or if I am going to drink, I'm going to stop going out and partying all night. And prefer the whole sober thing. It would be great to not worry about driving after 8:00 at night.
It's
my
just,
kid in the car,
Yeah. And it's just so unsexy. Like, when you are sober and you see these people and
Yeah.
like what their behavior is and how they really think they on something or
Yep.
like they looking good, you're like, yo, like,
you're
especially
jacked
for
up.
me now, like, if I'm out at an event and there's drinking or whatnot, and if a girl's trying to like get
Yeah.
at me, I'm like, girl, like,
Yeah.
there ain't no.
You need to open both eyes.
But
Only
if I had
one's
been
open now.
drinking, I probably would see this in a whole different light. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
my perspective would be different. But now that I'm like sober wherever I go, it's like you like in the energy that people have when they're drunk. It's hard
I can't
to be
around it.
Yeah, it's really hard.
I can go to events. I have like our Christmas parties, our like summer party, but there's a point where it flips and it starts to get, the food's all been eaten. Now everybody's just drinking.
Yeah.
And I just kind of look at the people that are my coworkers and I'm like, hey, I'm done. I'm heading home. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be around this.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing if I go to an event. Like, I'll go at 5, but you'll never see me past 7, stay at some event where everybody's getting hammered.
Knowing when to go,
I just don't
it's
wanna-
like,
yeah.
You see it flip like you said, and it's like, all right, it's time to get out of
Yep.
here.
Yeah.
Which is good because then you get home early and
And I'm waking up in the morning
Yeah.
early. And when I get to the office the next day, the people that were at the event are like, oh, I feel like shit. And I'm like, sorry, I don't. I feel
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I also have a lot of friends that are very much able to spend their life having a drink here and there. And it's not a horrible thing. But I think more and more it had become something where that majority was shifting. And the majority of people that were drinking were ending up having problems with it.
Yeah. I think it's very rare that
And it's okay to open up about it now. So I think that's why
Yeah.
more people are like dealing with it. It's not as taboo as it used to be sober.
Yeah, it just gets, for me, it just comes down to like, oh, how dumb are we really? As a whole, as a people, how dumb are we really? Are we really gonna keep choosing to indulge in these substances with alcohol? And we say we all want to be good to each other and all this and self-love and all that. Well, drinking really doesn't fit into that.
It doesn't.
And even if you don't have like severe alcoholic tendencies or like the negative aspect of that, it still affects the way you feel energetically, you know, how you wake up.
Yep.
All that kind of stuff affects your sleep. It affects all these different things that are going to affect the more beautiful things in your life, because you're not going to be able to show up 100% there.
Well, and at the end of the day, the ripple effect that we have on life that surrounds us, the people that surround us, you know, you may think it's okay to go out and drink and feel like shit the next morning. And I can't complain about it at HDG because we don't have a problem with this ever, or propaganda. Like there was never issues with it there. But like, I'll tell you what, running restaurants where it's kind of like the norm to finish your shift and go out and drink all night.
For sure.
And maybe, you know, do a little blow at 3 a.m. and then fall asleep at 6. And then come to work at noon or 11 for your shift. It's a little more prominent in that environment to see how horribly it affects the people that you work with. And I saw a lot of that over the years, or I've seen a lot of that over the years. But in our family life, the ripple effect, obviously I mentioned myself and kind of the shit that I put people through in the blackout stage. But if you can stop doing this when it affects you that much, you can take your life back. And all of us are afraid of what a future looks like, because we don't ever, all we see is the next 2 weeks or the next month, or, oh my God, it's going to be so hard for me to do this. I remember being in situations with like getting in trouble for drinking, and like this massive weight that was like, oh, I have to deal with like going to some classes, and I have to go and pay this fine, and then I have to go do this. And it all felt so daunting. And it was because I had a mindset that was like, I couldn't handle anything. I couldn't deal with any stress. I couldn't deal, you know. Now I look at these kind of things, and Cora's over there laughing because she helps me deal with so many things. But like, it's, nothing is daunting. Nothing is scary. I'm not afraid of anything. I don't have to look over my shoulder like, oh, did I offend those people at some point last week at the bar? Is that why they were looking at me? Like, fuck, I didn't offend anybody. It's so much easier to live your life with clarity and live a happy life and try to have better relationships, and both from a friend standpoint and from a partner standpoint. And you know, I don't ever want a girl to see me again drunk. Like I would,
right.
You know, I made the joke earlier about like the girl's eye being shut, and like I was the prime example of like dude that just like immediately turned into a slob, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to wrap it up on this so we can move on to other things, I think for me, it just ultimately came down to like, well, I'm not going to get to where I want to be if I continue this.
Yeah.
Also, you know, just coming down to a place with like, I'm not okay no longer with that type of behavior, that type of person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it also came to a place of like, why do I essentially hate myself? Like this, and what I do and the way I abuse alcohol is from a place of this is hate. Like, and I never thought it, I never felt that way. I never like, I was like, you know, it was very rare that I would feel hateful towards myself, but my behavior and how I would treat myself is like an underlying place of like, yo, this is like abuse. Yeah. Like you're straight abusing yourself. Like
you were showing yourself how little you cared about yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Just throwing yourself in the gutter and like basically chopping it up to like, I could lose my life tonight. And that's the kind of nights I would have.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, there were
nights where I hoped that I didn't come out of it. Like, it's just, you get to a point where you're just miserable. And yeah. So I don't wish that on anyone.
No. Yeah, it's scary. And it's scary to know, like, I know there's people out there in that same place that I was. And it's scary. You know, it's a scary, it's a crazy world we live in, and all the different experiences that we all are having as humans. And for me to know like those dark places, it's frightening for me, like, especially like when I'm out now, like if it's especially late, I'm like,
oh, dude.
I'm like, yo, like,
I'm a defensive driver at 8 o'clock at night.
I don't go through green lights without looking, making sure ain't nobody about to blow through. Like, I'm like trying to stay on my toes because I know they're out there.
For sure they are.
You know, and it's like, you gotta be, this shit's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And it's hopefully changing for the better. It's becoming more acceptable, and menus are being created for mocktails, and not that I miss the taste of alcohol at all. Like, the smell of it makes me sick.
I actually do miss the taste of, like, I love whiskey. I guess it's maybe in my Irish blood, but yeah, I just love a good whiskey. But
I got
where
to a point
whiskey
where
takes me,
yeah, that's a nasty road, huh?
I mean, it can be awesome. It can be,
until it's not.
And then it's not worth when it's not. Yeah. It's not worth that one night where it is not awesome.
Well, for me, it wasn't a roll of the dice. Like, which night is it going to? It came for me when I decided to drink.
Yeah,
it was blackout time, and it became, I don't know, there was like a 2-year period where I didn't not black out.
It was never great the next day either way, though, too.
On.
Like the hangovers, I'm not getting out of that. Yeah. So the other thing too for me is like finding the strength within to just deal with life straight up.
Yeah.
And because I realized I was using it as a way to escape my reality.
Yeah, masking,
and like
all
just
of
trying
that
to
shit.
like, I just don't want to be here like this for this time. And so using alcohol to just get away from my current state.
Yeah, and your accomplishments, though great in life, the celebrating becomes, okay, what's next? Not like, oh, let's go celebrate and ruin a week of my life because I feel like shit because I drank too much on Friday and Saturday night. Now it's like, okay, you accomplished this, dope. Go have a great meal, and then get back to it.
Yeah,
get back to it immediately.
How do you celebrate and come back with more energy than depleted energy? That's what I started realizing. Like, and that was like what I was talking about, maybe off camera or it was in this conversation, but that pattern of self-sabotage. Like, oh yeah, man, I've been crushing it, killing. It's time to go party. Like,
let's go fuck it up.
Yeah, let's go fuck. And and it's all in our language. Let's get hammered. Let's get smashed. It's like all the language is like signifying exactly what we're doing to ourselves. Destruction. Yeah. And that's what I would do. I'd get in a zone for a while. Then I think, oh, I deserve it. I deserve to go out and go party in Vegas or whatever it was. And then I come back totally just depleted financially.
Oh yeah, mentally.
And like, all of
physically.
it. And it's like, what are we doing? This ain't cool.
I know that there's other things that we want to chat about, but I want to say one thing that I do remember right before I kind of hit my bottom, my dad saying to me, like, how many times are you going to start over? How many times are you going to ruin what's going on in your life and have to start over?
Damn. That's a
and,
good way for your dad to put it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's a smart guy. Like, and that made a difference. It didn't end it for me at that point. Yeah. But that stuck with me. Like, I don't ever want to start over. Like, man, I've killed myself for other people over the years. When I was drinking all the time, I still was a very hardworking person. And I remember, like, and I would like say things like, "Oh my God, one mistake," and like, no, it wasn't one mistake. Like they didn't fire you for one mistake. They fired you because you're a drunk, and I would never admit it, and I would always blame other people, and it was woe is me. I was the victim, and man, once you own that shit, life is so much better, so much better. So, yeah.
Totally.
I'm glad we talked about this because I don't. I'm not embarrassed if someone asks why aren't you drinking. I'm like, oh, because I don't, because I'm a shit show. But getting into it, like I don't really get into it much. So
no, I think it's great. I think
I feel comfortable.
I think there's some really good content in there for people. And honestly, some of the conversations that I have based around this is where I get the most feedback for like people that are like, yo, that was really helpful. So yeah, it's important. I mean, like us talking about it, if like one person, I know that's cliche, but if one person's like, I'm going to fucking try that, then we've succeeded. And through the years, I have had numerous people reach out to me and ask that question. Like, dude, how do you like go and do the shit you do and go to these events and never drink? Like, how do you deal with all the crap in life? And I'm like, really well now. Like that's how I deal with it. Before I didn't deal with it well. But it's easy to not drink. You order a water and you drink the water. Yeah, or soda water with lime. You know what I mean?
I throw that shit out. Like that's my Wooden City, like soda water and lime.
Yeah, give me that. They got the mountain water, right?
Yeah, they
the mineral.
do.
I love when places have actual mineral water bottles, like. Because then you can feel a little classy instead of them just like hitting it with the gun. Like give me something nice. Let me get the bottle service. I just want high quality H2O, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it becomes more important when it's your drink for the night. Absolutely. I got San Pellegrino in the fridge all the time.
Right.
Buddy that was like, she was like, you got to have better water in the fridge. So now I keep it in the fridge. It's there.
Totally. Yeah. And I would just. One last thought I have on the drinking thing, like, because me and you were both interested in, how do you create a better community?
Yeah.
And alcohol is the root of why our communities are all fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, alcohol is, you look at the numbers, it is the base of all dysfunction that happens within our communities. And it creates so much separation, in relationships and whatever. And I know that we're never going to get rid of it. But, and the narrative is already starting to take form. And I think it sounds like some of the younger generation is treating it different. There's more of them treating it different. I know they still get down, but it seems like there's more consciousness with some of the younger people around it. They have more tools or at least information surrounding it than when I did.
And you brought it up earlier with like really taking care of yourself. People's health means a lot more to them than it did 30, 40 years ago. You watch old movies and it's like, was that teacher smoking in the class? Like, was that, like that kind of shit happened.
Right.
People smoking on planes.
On the planes, yeah.
Yeah, like
we still have the no smoking in the.
I know.
I've never.
How old is this plane? It's been illegal for 30 years. Why do you keep building new planes with no smoking signs?
Right, like the old timers got to be reminded.
Old Buck goes rolling in for his first flight.
Yeah,
coming
Frank
out of North
from
Dakota.
Vietnam's like, I was in Vietnam. I'm lighting up.
I'm smoking. It does kind of scare me sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
really, how old is this fucking plane?
Right.
Yeah, but like you talked when we were at the office, you love traveling. That's a huge part of my life. You just spent some time in Ireland and Iceland.
Playa del Carmen area is more where I was in Tulum, and Costa Rica in the Guanacaste province. Those are the only place out of country Canada a few times, but Canada to me is kind of just part of us, even though I can't go up there right now because of my drinking stuff. So which sucks for my snowboarding.
We got mountains. We got mountains.
And not like BC.
No, but we've got Hood and Baker.
Hood's great. Baker's great. those two, but they're not.
They're not Whistler Blackcomb.
And like Nelson's
I hate
only.
to throw that.
Oh,
But,
totally.
yeah, and
but
that-
Nelson's only like a few hours from here.
I just a while ago went up to
Baker's like fuck. You got Baker's like what? It's like 7 hours
Yeah.
from here.
what was the town that I
Or
went to in
Baker's
Canada?
more. Bachelor. No, I'm thinking Bachelor.
Bachelor's farther.
Yeah, Bachelor's like 14
Yeah.
probably or something.
It's pretty cool how close Canada is.
Yeah.
Like I do love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up recently and spent the weekend up there at a little tiny resort town. My dentist was buying a condo up there, and she was like, "Oh, you got to go see this town." And now I can't remember what it's called. It's on the way to Banff. It was right across the border. Like I want to say 20 minutes from the border.
Nelson, BC is super popular.
Yeah. Well,
and-
this is on the way to Nelson.
Oh, okay.
But I want to say it took me 2 hours and 5 minutes to get
Yeah.
to town. So
right.
it wasn't that far, but
Yeah,
there's
Banff is
something about
close,
living in
like,
a great
it's
community
amazing.
like Spokane, but also traveling and seeing the rest of the world and seeing how other people live, seeing how they design.
I say it's great to live in Spokane. It sucks to be stuck here, though. That's my
Yeah.
perspective. Like it's
But at the same time, you're doing what you can to make the most of your time here. Like you're growing your company, you're
Totally.
doing the podcast, you're trying to build a community.
yep.
And same thing, like we chatted earlier about podcast stuff and I didn't start If Not Now When because I was like, oh, I think people need to hear what I have to say, because I don't feel that way. What I do feel is, and we mentioned this a couple times on our podcast, like all I was doing was complaining about downtown and complaining about our community. And I would go back to the office and I would be like, oh, I just saw this outside the building. And oh, I just went here to this place and this is what's going on. And like, that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to shut my mouth and go do something about it. And I didn't know what else to do. So I reached out to Brennan and was like, hey man, can we make our community better by talking about it? He's like, I have just the place for you. So, that's kind of what we're trying to do. And it's the same thing you're trying to do. And you mentioned like growing up, I'm not big on organized like religion and, I'm not agnostic or an atheist or anything. I'm just not into like humans telling me, like people that are flawed running these churches, and that's not where I want my son to find community. I don't want to put him in a private school and have him find community there and just surround him with those people. I want him like, and I've said this on the podcast numerous times, like I want a community. And I think that I feel that way because I grew up in a small town where it was a community still. And it really was. It was a community. And I know that Mayberry exists still in places, and I don't want Luca to grow up in Mayberry. I want him to grow up in a city where he gets real life, lessons taught to him throughout his youth. Where he's around all different types of people and, but I also don't feel like Spokane's a big community right now.
Yeah, I
feel like
don't
there's a
feel that
disconnect.
way. I don't feel that way. And that, like you said, and we talked about, that's kind of why I'm like, I think doing city chapters and doing this podcast is like, how do I maybe find or help build or create or whatever that is, a more sense of what I feel is missing in my life. And that is, a community of people that are really knitted together in their efforts and in their lives.
Yeah.
And, I feel like we're all so separated. And, I think that's coming from the top down on purpose, for different reasons, which
I agree.
but we still have the choice and we still have the power to create community if we want to. But breaking through the programming that we all face in our minds, because that's difficult to unprogram and reprogram. I mean, everybody is like turning to Instagram as our community. Like That's not a fucking community.
No, it's not.
You know, and it is so disconnecting, you know, and
well, it's isolating too.
It's isolating.
It's making like a lot of socially inept people, where like online they can talk, they have their like friends that they game with or their friends on Instagram, but you get them out in public and they're just socially inept. Like the idea of having a conversation face to face with a 20-year-old, like when they would rather have it via text, is weird. You know, there's no emotion in text. It doesn't matter what emoji you use. Like emotion comes from face to face conversations, and I feel like people aren't having those. And
that's why I do the podcast.
Yeah.
That's like right there, really why I do it.
You want to see like, how does this guy really feel about it? Because your body language, your eye, like that tells the story of what you're feeling. And it's like in a relationship, having that conversation that you probably could have had via text, but maybe could have come across as like hurtful. Like face to face, they see you're not out to hurt them. They see that you're just trying to like have a conversation. Which leads into like trying to date in a like digital world, especially for somebody that grew up with a rotary phone.
Well, yeah,
like,
and then
it's different.
Dating too, like in well, like how the digital world affects the real world in dating is like, a lot of women, even that aren't asking or opening themselves to Instagram like that, may get a lot of different messages from guys that are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And so when that jades their perception towards men, and so when a good, authentic man actually approaches them in real life, they may be like, what the fuck is this creep up to? And it's like, that's where we're at. All men are creeps. All women are whores, like, and hoes. Like,
it's a horrible space.
Like, that's
right
what
now.
is like the dialogue that's starting to build up. And like, even this whole thing with like, if you were a woman and you had to choose between being left in the woods with a bear or a man, which would you choose? And like most women are choosing a bear. Like they'd rather just risk getting fucking mauled by a bear than being able to trust a man. And it's
well,
like,
at least with the bear, it's over quick and they're not brutalized for fucking 25 years.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I get that aspect, and that's the argument, right? But like,
so
that's just where we're at.
Somebody in my one of my coworkers in the last like few months had mentioned like people, women especially, like in this day and age, it is very odd for a woman to have a guy like really truly treat them well and like be genuinely good to them.
And even when you do, they freak out.
They're like freaked out. It's
there's no winning,
backwards.
Man. There's no winning.
It is like Cora's here. Like guys are dicks. And then when you're a good guy, like people don't know what to do. Yeah. Cora's just giggling. Yeah, he missed out, right? He missed out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. And I think of like a lot about the effect on community and how it affects me. How I even like I was talking to you about how I don't even know if I want to get married or have children. And that right there is the biggest problem with what's going on in our society is like, that's probably the most beautiful thing that I could really have in all of life, in all of accomplishments, to have a beautiful marriage and beautiful children. There's probably nothing better than that. But from the way things are going, from all my friends going through divorces and like all this stuff that I see, I'm like, I don't want none of that though. I don't want none of that. And I don't want to bring up a kid in this world too, is like an excuse maybe that I have formed, but that's being projected on to me. And is that really even my thought? Or is this like, coming from a deeper place of how they're disconnecting us? And making us think like, oh, don't get married, don't have children, stay to yourself, work hard. Women, you need to work hard too. Don't, put your kids away and pay for them to be raised by somebody else. And like now we don't have any family dynamics, like barely, except
God.
for minimal time
Yeah.
that we all just try to get together to go do things. And like,
You're not wrong about any of that. Like,
I know,
it is the most amazing thing in the world to have
Right.
a child. It is very amazing. And his mom and I divorced, but we also divorced because we weren't compatible. And her life is better, my life is better because.
Did you guys have more like a conscious uncoupling?
Yeah,
kind of
like
situation,
I don't know what they call
or?
it on Instagram, but that sounds
Yeah.
right. We just basically we knew that we were different enough, and we grew apart, and we grew
Yeah.
apart pretty quickly, but we treated each other really respectfully, and we're
Love that.
close.
And that's beautiful,
She's an
man.
amazing mom. She's an amazing friend to me when I need it. She's
awesome.
She's just a good human being.
I love hearing
And
that,
so am
man.
I.
I love hearing
And I treat
that.
her as well as I can possibly treat a person. But we just, why take 25, 30, 40 years of someone's life trying to make something work when that square peg will not fit in the round hole?
Right.
And I'd rather be lonely and sad and miss her than take up any more of her life. And she feels the same way.
And how that downloads onto your child, like
Dude,
that kind of
whole
relationship. Because
stay together for the kids bullshit.
It's bullshit.
It is, yeah.
And I know it's bullshit because my parents have done it.
Same. My parents divorced after we were old enough to be on
still
our
have
own.
it. I don't know. I mean, they're separated right now, but like they should have been divorced a long time ago. And
my parents
that's my
legit
opinion,
said,
but
we wanted you to have a mom and dad at home, so we held on.
That was the same excuse.
So I ruined the best years of your life.
Yeah. But
thanks. I won't carry that for very long.
Right.
It's not better for kids to be surrounded by a bad relationship or an unloving relationship. I mean, even if it's not bad and there's no arguing or anything else, but children need to see love. They need to see the passion that is what is supposed to be a good relationship. And my parents were amazing people. And it was like June and Ward Cleaver, like the Leave It to Beaver family. But there wasn't the love that should have been there. There wasn't the connection that should have been there. And that's it, man. When you find somebody with that connection, that's when it can be really amazing. Where you really, really connect with the person, and you have similar interests, and you love a lot of the same things, and same morals, same beliefs, all those things. But
do you think?
But you're also right. It's scary to think of raising a kid right now.
Right.
It's.
But it probably always
different.
has been. There's always been risks to having children, and at one time it was like most likely they could die at childbirth or soon after. There was major risks there.
There was a lot of war and any.
So it's like,
but
that's what we do though. We have kids. That's So it's also like we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Or we won't.
And we do.
We won't.
And we figure it out, and that community helps you. My
Yeah.
community right now are the people that I work with and my group of friends, and they help you.
That's good.
But yeah, dude, the kids thing. My son is amazing and fun and annoying and cute and kind and loving and all the things rolled up into one. And it's, I don't know, I'm sure everyone says this to has kids, but you really truly learn what unconditional love is. We've all been in love but something could change that. A person could do something super shitty and you're like, I don't love you anymore. Your kid can dump Kool-Aid on the carpet and you're pissed but that love doesn't go, it doesn't waver. There's just something unconditional about it that is, it's great to learn about. Because I was 40 when Luca was born, or 39, 40, something like that. No, I was 40. And so I was older, so I was also more capable of being present, and so I definitely don't disagree with people saying, hey, we should all wait until we're a little bit older and not as fucked up to have kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wouldn't change that for anything. Actually, I look back at my life and I wouldn't change anything other than hurting people, we have to go through what we go through in order to like become the people we are. And once you're to that point where you care about yourself and you are good with who you are, then you don't want to risk looking back and changing shit. Cause
I finally have reached that place, it took a lot of work to get to a place where I'm like, I'm actually okay with who I am.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the decisions I make, how I live my life, how I treat people.
How you process everything.
Yeah.
Like that's another great piece of growing up and like kind of getting your shit together is like you process things differently. You don't react, the way you may have reacted 10 years ago.
Totally different.
Yeah. It's good. Right, Cora?
So I mean, on the sense of community, you have your podcast, If Not Now, When, Spokane, and that's all based upon this idea. It started off being centered on downtown Spokane, or
it was kind of, and really, yes, the whole concept behind it was like, how do we in a fair way clean up our city, both for the people that own businesses and the people that are having a hard time? How do we make sure that we're not, I don't know, turning a blind eye for another year or 2 years or 3 years to like the illegal shit that's happening? How do we get people to like hold everyone responsible equally to like following the rules and the law? And, I had a friend that she got a speeding ticket and she's like, I feel like going down to the city and saying, why can the dude shoot up heroin on the corner and then take a poop, but I go 7 miles an hour over the speed limit and I'm getting a ticket. I have to pay a fine. I have to go to traffic court, or I have to go do whatever it is I have to do. And she's like, I was a lawyer in this community for years and paid taxes and did all these things, but these other people can go and break the law and no one does anything because we don't want to offend anybody by forcing those people to go and pay for the laws they're breaking. Like that's, to me, it's tough. Like I want to have empathy and I want to make sure that if someone wants help, that they're able to get help. But like I've straight up asked, hey, if you put that shit down, like a younger couple, I'll pay for you to go to rehab right now. Like I'll pay for you to leave and go to rehab, but you got to stop doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple that were sitting out by our dumpsters at the 3rd and Washington building. Mm-hmm. No interest whatsoever in getting that help.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. The idea was to figure out, we've had a really vibrant downtown many, many times. And we've had the 90s where it wasn't so great.
I saw a picture from the 70s. It looked epic, dude. I was like, whoa.
Well, especially with
I was like,
what
that
was
was
going
what
on.
it looked like in the 70s.
Dude,
it
it was
looked so
dope.
cool. I was like, wait.
Not that I remember, but
I mean,
like,
I guess that was around the World's Fair time too. So like, but there was like where Macy's was. So it was on, I guess, Main Ave.
Yeah.
Or Riverside. It could have been up a street. But either way, it was just like, it looked like a whole vibe, man.
Yeah.
I was just like, dang, man. Like,
Busy.
I've never seen downtown Spokane look like it did that day that they took that picture. It just was so cool looking.
I feel like, and we also have to like admit that the urban sprawl that we have, like it used to be downtown was where you went to get all your shopping done. And then there was the invention of the gigantic mall out in the valley on the north side. In every community in America, there was a gigantic mall built. And that replaced going shopping at the community stores in a downtown core, coupled with the big box, the Macy's and the Crescent and Nordstrom. No matter where you lived, you came downtown and shopped. Well, Northtown Mall opened, so now you didn't have to go downtown for clothes. Then big box stores opened and huge grocery stores and all the things that kind of allowed this community to grow outward versus kind of up in the way maybe a Seattle or Portland grew.
I feel like, yeah, just downtown growing up in the 90s here, like it was just totally neglected,
Yeah.
dirty, unsafe.
Yep.
Like my mom used to take me to UTL because I love skateboarding.
Yeah.
I don't know why she took me there. Like I almost, as a kid, seen somebody get stabbed probably several times, and my mom like would be there, like
She was like, that shit'll
and
buff out.
just
Don't worry about it.
because she loved me enough to take me, but I'm sure she was terrified being
Yeah.
there for me, for herself, like just being in this environment. Like it smelled like piss, you
Yeah.
know, like, I mean, but like all around downtown Spokane was like that for a
Yeah.
while. And
There was an economic like woe in Spokane, and I want to say it started in the 80s,
yeah,
and then it got cleaned up a couple different times. And obviously, the last time, in my opinion, it got cleaned up was when Condon took over, former Mayor Condon.
I mean, they're
he
doing
made an
good
effort.
right now off of Main Ave, like right where
Because they know if the mall goes under,
Yeah.
our downtown dies.
It's-
it just dies.
we're going Mad
the
Max
Coles
out
are
here.
keeping this community
Yeah.
like alive right now. There's
Right.
our downtown core.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and they're reinvesting in, like, the Macy's building closed, and they paid an exorbitant amount of money to renovate the old Macy's into the M building and some of the other buildings, you know, just off of Main that they've turned into nicer, you know, apartments. But like I've said numerous times, we have to have a core group of people that are living downtown in order for it to thrive. If no one lives down here and the office occupancy is low, we end up with like all the businesses failing. You know, the little sandwich shop on the corner can't make it if no one's going to it. It's not going to work just to be there for Hoop Fest and Bloomsday and what other, you know, the Lilac Parade. Like you have to have constant flow of traffic in a restaurant or in a candle shop or a clothing store in order for there to be a business that's going to survive. And until we not just build more, but saturate our core with people living and walking around as their normal day-to-day life, it's not going to go back to what it was, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's definitely always people out, but it's a mixture of the type of people, right? And you know, you talked about this, like regardless, unless you're on Main Ave, like you get off that block, or maybe even on Spokane Falls Boulevard, you probably feel pretty safe right there.
Absolutely.
But once you start
And
leaving,
in the park, I feel safe.
Yeah, in the
Riverfront
park,
Park, I feel
thank
totally
God,
safe.
because when I was growing up, it didn't feel
yeah,
safe.
dudes were hiding behind trees and shit. I remember.
It was sketchy as hell.
Yeah.
Now you go in that park and you can feel at peace and you
It's
can
safe,
really
it's
and
lit
enjoy.
well,
They've done such an amazing job there. And it sounded like from that podcast with Condon that he was in the first stages of developing all of that.
All of
right?
that was his plan, like in the end of his first term. I want to say even before that, like halfway through his first term, he decided that was going to be his legacy. Like he was going to clean
one hell
that
of a legacy.
up.
Yeah.
Huge legacy.
Yeah.
Now, couple that with what the Coles do, what like Main Avenue where we are. I mean, I know at night this is probably crazy down here. At least I think because of all the bars and lounges.
Yeah.
But
Tangin' Spots be
yeah,
going crazy.
he knows how to throw a party. I feel like this area, what you were saying with Main and Riverside, Spokane Falls Boulevard, that's all good. But you get a couple blocks up, the bus station, you know, 2nd Ave, 3rd Ave.
Yeah.
And it's weird because you look at 3rd Avenue, we're a block from a really, really large high school with like 13 to 18-year-olds.
Right.
And the amount of shit going on in that area around the school is mind-boggling. Like
It is. It's insane.
and
It's just like, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
it's
crazy.
We've pushed to have like, I don't know, safer, more lit up streets and we've pushed. In fact, the podcast started because I went to a meeting regarding the Business Improvement District Board growing and or having a south downtown bid board where we would have a clean team up there. We would have more resource help up there for people that do want help. But that hasn't come to fruition. So we're letting kind of the ancillary pieces of downtown die, and to look at, like I said it when you were at my office, like one of the highest producing Starbucks in our area shut down because they couldn't open up anymore. They were completely inundated with people that had no interest in their business, no interest in buying anything, and didn't want to obey the rules set forth in that little strip mall there right at the entrance of Division off the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
And it shut down, and now it's boarded up. And so when you get off the freeway in Spokane coming from the east, and you go to like take the bridge across to go to Gonzaga or to go to the Riverfront Park or to go to an event, you see boarded up buildings. I mean, even the church that was there, like that Redemption Church, just was like, yeah, we're good. We're leaving. So there's an abandoned church. There's an abandoned strip mall, an empty Starbucks, a 7-Eleven across the street that has to hire robot security.
Robot security?
Yeah, like those little robots that drive around and film everything that's going on, just so they can be sure that when someone dies on their site from ODing, that they're not blamed for it or
right,
whatever.
Totally. It's insane at that. That 7-Eleven is
those poor guys that have run that. They've run it forever. They used to.
I used to go to it back in the day.
And it was clean
when it was all right.
Yeah, it was clean.
I wouldn't ever go there now. Never. Like
it's that whole area. That's the entrance to our city.
Yeah, it's the first thing you've seen. That's the main exit, and it's just like it's like a zombie war zone.
There are times where I literally
that's kind of
count
cold,
people.
but like these people be like straight up like they on the other side of things. You know what I mean? And I'm not looking down at them or anything like that, but it is what it is. Like they just walk right out in front of your car. Like they have no idea what's around them. I mean, that's like straight up. You know, people talk about a zombie apocalypse. Like we in that.
That's
shit.
what it feels like.
It's been in it, and it's crazy. And what do we do, man? I don't know. I don't know the answers, but that's why
some of these
this
people
podcast
are not going to get help themselves. They're just not.
No,
they want to be there. They want to do it. However, they could get help if we would actually hold them accountable and arrest them if they're shooting up heroin in front of my building or in front of the mall or in front of anywhere in public.
I mean, I don't know if
like,
it's
put them in
arresting, like taking them to jail. It would be taking them to some kind of facility where they actually can get treatment, because a jail is not going to give them nothing.
And what I mean is you have to sometimes force something on people to give them the opportunity to clear their head and think about, do I really want to go back to that? Give them an opportunity. And I personally, like, if it's a matter of, you know, some dude being all jacked up and doing something to my son as we walk out of our apartment or out of the building, or out of our office, like that dude should be in jail if he's going to be in that situation.
It doesn't matter.
That's not the answer for everyone.
No.
But for some people, it's the only answer.
Oh,
whether
for
that jail has some sort of program in it to get people clean and to help them and all the things. But I do know that we have enough help in Spokane. If you really want help, it's there. Like it really, truly is there. And there are people that know the statistics on the beds, and there are people that know that we're lacking, especially in the wintertime. But if you're like, you know what, I'm done doing this, there are 700 different ways to get help. And the first one is being sober and polite and asking somebody, where can I get help? Because most of the people that grew up here, that live here, have been here long enough, they can point out like, hey, Catholic Charities has an office here. Yeah. But just acting the way they're acting, putting the fear into people that are walking around, or the people that would normally come downtown that aren't anymore. I mean, one of the guys we interviewed recently is like, it's been 5 years. This is a community member that is an incredible human being. He's like, I haven't brought my kids downtown in 5 years except Hoop Fest. Like, that sucks, man. There's the park. There's all these great restaurants. The mall's incredible. They're doing everything they can to activate the people that own the mall to activate downtown and bring better companies so that we can have the shopping experience. And at the end of the day, like there are people that are just like, I'm not going down there. That's what I want to change.
Me too, 100%. And
and I don't want to discard humanity doing it. Like I don't want to just get a hose and wash the streets off and whoever gets in the way gets swept away to the river. I don't want to do that. But we also have to look at the people that are killing themselves trying to run companies and run businesses and create jobs and create commerce for the city, to pay the taxes, to keep the streets clean, to, you know what I mean? Like everybody has to get looked out for.
Yeah. And I think it's as simple too as like just the overall safety of our community.
Yep.
Like that alone should entail that certain types of substance abuse cannot be used in public.
Yeah.
And if you do, or if you are, under the influence and you're caught in an environment where that's not going to...
It's dangerous, yeah.
We have to do something about it.
I agree.
We can't just keep letting people do whatever the hell they want to do and not giving them any help. And if that means, yes, we got to force help onto these people, then I vote that we do that.
Yeah.
But, and also we talked about this. At what point are we going to let others impede on our safety so we don't offend their rights or whatever we're trying to conjure up as being PC these days? Bottom line is, tax-paying community members should not have to be worried about walking down the street with their children.
Yeah.
They
shouldn't have,
they shouldn't have to have any worries about that at all. And like you said, we have resources, we have things. So, I mean, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's another question we can ask Spokane. When's enough enough?
Yeah.
Like, when are we going to say enough's enough? We
don't
start...
need 9 more, homeless housing or transitional housing put in the center of our downtown. Like, we want to help those people, but it also, it ruins the community around it. I mean, you look at division. Like it's chock full of this transitional housing that is necessary, but is it necessary at the entrance of our city?
It's not safe for anybody. It's not safe for them because
it's not.
They're getting in the traffic where, dude, I've seen countless people almost get hit by cars there.
Oh yeah, and I guarantee if you go and look it up, people are getting hit.
Oh, I'm sure
they're getting hit.
I'm worried about killing one of them.
Yeah.
Because seriously, like if for 1 second, if I'm not paying attention and one just
they will just
and I just hit one and then I'm going to jail for manslaughter because this guy didn't use the crosswalk and just ran out in front of my car.
And he was so messed up on fentanyl or whatever he was on that he didn't even know where he was.
Yeah, exactly. And this is not, that's not fair for me to have to be even worried, or anybody to be worried about that driving downtown.
Well,
but that's like a real concern that I'm sure a lot of people share.
At the end of the day, the dude that's wandering out into the street, the dude that owns a little coffee shop, or the people that own a restaurant, everybody deserves to be protected, and everybody deserves to be able to do what they do in a safe manner.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that, like, even Portland, Oregon decided, like, maybe drugs shouldn't be legal. Maybe we should actually start cracking down before our entire community falls apart and our city falls apart.
Yeah.
Because they were the first to be like, you know what? The right answer is just let everybody do any drug they want, wherever they want, and don't arrest anybody for drugs. But that's great in a world where we don't have, like, the problems we have from a personality standpoint, like the abuse that that we as a society have decided is the path for how we're going to use substances. It's just abusing it. And Spokane, I want to say it was in 2020 or 2021 where we were like, okay, we're not going to arrest people for using drugs. So then you have these videos of like police officers asking people to put their drugs away, and dudes being like, no, I don't have to. It's not illegal. It's legal for me to use this. And they bust out their tinfoil and smoke whatever it is they're smoking. And these poor police officers that thought they were going to be helping our community are stuck with their hands tied because our local government was afraid to offend anybody.
Yeah.
And it was a super volatile time from a social standpoint, which good on us for finally stepping up and saying, you know, the Me Too and the Black Lives Matter and all of that stuff. But it also then became like, well, we can't do anything. Like defunding the police, like we've seen what that does to communities. We've seen what happened in Portland, what happened in Seattle. Like, you don't, like the police still need to be there. People are still fucking people up.
Oh, yeah.
People are still breaking the law.
Spokane's a dangerous place.
You know,
like underground, like there's so much things that happen in Spokane that don't ever get on the news.
Yeah.
Spokane's a very dangerous place.
Yeah.
With gang activity, all sorts of stuff that goes on that people don't know about. We need the police.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
But we need to.
And when you stop breaking the law and you're okay with just like, you typically are okay with the police being around. Yeah. I remember being afraid of the police until I stopped breaking the law. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, they're here for good. And, and they risk their lives every day.
I used to be on the other side of things. You know, I used to like, you know, fuck the police basically. But as I matured and grown as a human, a man, and as a citizen, I respect the police. I respect, you know, the higher essence of what they should and can accomplish, and their purpose to a community. But right now, you know, we're just letting, however you want to put it, people that are lost or criminals run rampant. Yeah. And there has to be a change in that. And I have a ultra amount of empathy for why people can end up on the streets. Most of them come from situations that most of us could never even fucking imagine.
For sure.
And the reason that they're so messed up, most of us would be that messed up too if we came from meth houses, if we came from abuse, being molested, all these different things that most of those people have been through, and that's why they ended up there. You know, it's, you know, that has to be understood too. There has to be these fucking like I have friends that they have no sympathy for these people at all. They're like, honestly, throw them in the river, or you know,
I've heard the same.
You know,
thing.
shoot them down. Like, I don't care.
Yeah,
that's their mentality.
We're all human beings.
And exactly. So like, I'm totally on the side of like, yo, look, if I was acting wrong and doing things that hurt my community, y'all would be doing something about it. You'd be like, oh, y'all need to get a hold of Bobby. Bobby needs to be arrested. Yep. Okay, so we need to hold the same standards across all the boards for every 100%. Person that's going to be in our city. That's all, and the standards should be high. Yeah, we shouldn't be having these low standards of like, oh yeah, you can just be shitting on our sidewalks, shooting up drugs, fucking flashing your dick. Yeah, why? That is not the standard we should hold for any citizen that wants to walk our streets. We have to raise that standard, and if you can't abide to it, then there has to be certain things, and I'm not saying throw them in jail or prison. I think prison and jail can work. Obviously, we need to expand that base because they just can't fit that many people right now in our county and stuff.
I would never claim to understand the inner workings of a county jail or a prison or the system in general. Like,
well, you ain't learning shit in county. I've been in county. Yeah. You ain't learning a damn thing but further tricks of how to be a criminal.
And you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
So is that broken?
It's totally broken.
Are we filling our jails with people that maybe could use more help than they're getting?
Totally.
And how do we fund that? I mean,
that's where where the questions really start to raise and can hopefully be answered, because traditional jail system is not gonna take in somebody and put somebody out better. They're gonna probably come out worse,
Yeah.
or they just look at it as like, oh yeah, I'll take a little break from
I
my
did my
life,
time.
and
Yeah.
or it's just like for some people it's like, oh, I got a bed, some food for a little bit, and then I'll be back out doing whatever I'm
Doing what I
doing.
was
But
doing.
there's no education, there's no, and dude, you get in there, those people. And I can understand why, but CEOs, they don't give two fucks about who you are.
I can't fathom being super excited about my job
they
as a
hate
CEO.
You. You feel hated when you're in there. They don't, you know what I mean? So like, and maybe some people need that kind of discipline, but I don't think in general most people need that. Most people need to feel like actually somebody cares about them. And that's why most of these people are doing what they're doing, because they feel nobody actually gives a fuck about them.
Yeah, and then the system does the same thing.
And the system does the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's where it has to be shifted. And I know that from my own experience. You know, luckily I was just smart enough to know I don't want to be back in this place.
Yeah.
That's what changed me. I don't want to be back here. You know what I mean? Like this is not
I'm pretty sure
dope.
Condon was talking about like the diversion program that he went to, like, I don't know, once a week. Went and sat on like drug court and like gave these people opportunities to do something different than just go to jail. So I agree, jail's not the answer, but how do we redefine what jail is? Like, you know, we say we're going to give you help, but we're going to give you all the freedoms that you had before help. And you're going to blow off the help we're giving you when there's somebody out there that could take your bed. That would be like, I think there's an accountability in our society that is never being met. Like you ask for help, there has to be some sort of like, all right, here's the deal. You can't do this. You can't do that. If you want help, you need to take it and take it seriously. And I feel like that's not the case a lot. It's the same thing with, you know, I'll go to a drug rehab, and I'll just stay a few days and get feeling better so I don't die, and then I'm going to go out and do it again. There needs to be accountability, just in general, for all of us as human beings and as people living in a society. We all should be held accountable for what we do. And when you're asking for a bunch of help, you should also be held accountable for things. Yeah. And I hate saying like Catholic Charities, but you look at the buildings they built. They built these great housing units for people, and they did put them right at the entrance of the city. But let's throw that aside and let's just talk about how they've let it deteriorate over a 2-year, 3-year period, and it's just trashed around the building.
Yeah,
it's just trash.
Nobody's cleaning
anything up.
Yeah,
it's across the street. I don't need to worry about it. Bullshit. You're causing this problem. You say you're helping, but you're also causing a problem for the rest of the community. So how do we hold them accountable?
Yeah, and we have to have security down on Main Ave. Where's their security? Securing the blocks, making sure that the people that are staying in their buildings aren't doing certain things.
And I assure you, the money spent on the security guards for the Main Avenue businesses is not being spent to make sure it's safe around those buildings. So what happens to the kid that used to walk to school past, you know, the farmer's market that used to be where that big Catholic Charities building is on 2nd Avenue? What happens to that kid? Yeah. They can't walk past there anymore. Right. Oh my God, are you joking?
Yeah.
It's just accountability. Yeah.
Yeah. I
you know the deal.
I think about this stuff often, man. And, you know, the podcast is hopefully one way that, you know, I can get to some answers and maybe start figuring out a way to help.
Yeah.
You know, and I know it's very complex, and it's a very complex situation.
Yeah.
All these moving parts that we have to make this all work and feel good it's not easy. There's a lot of forces at play.
Yeah. But you and Brandon and I doing what we're doing and asking those questions, like, I get it. It's complicated. Explain it to me. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe there's a better way. Yeah. You know, and I understand that politics and those layers and the bureaucracy that is sometimes so layered that nobody wants to question it because it's like, well, it's a shit show. It's a giant mess. So there's nothing I can do to help. Well, maybe ask those questions.
And maybe it's individuals like us that don't come from that standpoint of the bureaucratic bullshit that are like, yeah, we can shake it up.
Yeah, we can do something.
We'll do something if you guys won't. And that's how these kinds of things traditionally most of the time happen. It takes somebody to be like, yeah, I don't care about all that.
How about a revolution?
And I'm not saying I have the answers by any means. I'm just wanting to have the conversation and, see at least where that leads, because something needs to be done.
Yeah.
And these people, I feel terrible for these people that are out there. Like, do you think any of them want to live that life?
No.
Like, do you think any of them
afraid,
chose this life? Yeah. Like, they don't want to be like that. None of them dreamt of becoming the way that they're living.
There was a great ad in the 90s, and it was an anti-drug ad, and it shows a dude running, just a regular guy, but from like about here up, and he's running and his hair's blowing. And it talks about like, when I grow up, I want to be a basketball player. When I grow up, I want to be a runner. I want to, and then it pans out and there's a cop chasing this obviously down on his luck person. And all it says is nobody ever grew up and said, I want to be a junkie.
Right.
Like no one does choose that, but it's going to happen and it's going to continue to happen and it's going to change. It was cocaine, it was crack, it was heroin, and then it like kind of almost like a cycle goes back, and now we have drugs that are being produced in labs that are so incredibly strong that like it's an epidemic. Like it's a horrible thing, and we're seeing it front lines in downtown Spokane. There's not any time of the day that I couldn't take a client and walk outside and look down the alley and say, yep, there's 6 people and they're all smoking fentanyl or whatever they're smoking, right? I'm assuming it's fentanyl because then they pass out and there were a couple times where I'm like, oh, dude, there's a dead guy in the entry of my building. Like, and I go over and they're not cold, but like, do I call the police? Do I call an ambulance? And they're just passed out. They're just... So it's not changing. It's not going to change.
Right.
We have to figure out a way to change the way we've dealt with things.
Yeah. Some has to be done differently.
Yeah. And history does repeat itself. And I know in the 80s, the heroin problem in Spokane was really bad. And now it's kind of repeating in the form of a synthetic drug that's like heroin. It's just, we got to do something.
Yeah, man. Got to do something. Yep. And that's why we're having these conversations. So, to the listeners, share your thoughts, because I'm curious, I know everybody has mixed feelings and thoughts about all this, but we need to start having the conversation because something has to be done.
Yeah.
And we could keep going. We've already chopped up 2 hours. I know you got things you got to get to.
Yeah,
so
man.
I would love
Thank you so much for having me on. And we'll just have to do this like over coffee and shit.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be coming on yours at some point so we can.
Yeah, I think we're scheduling that now.
Yeah, so I'll be coming on his people so you can listen to this conversation probably continued in a bit.
Too.
Yeah,
I get to find out about you.
I wish we didn't have to end it, but
yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
All right, Joshua.
Appreciate you.
All right, this chapter was with Joshua Hissong from HDG Architecture. I'm your host, Bobby J. This is City Chapters Podcast. Till next time.
Yo.